Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to make these pumpkins out of just one 2x4. So for this build, we're just going to use one 8-foot 2x4. Good news about this 2x4 is it doesn't even have to be that straight. We're going to be cutting it into pretty short pieces, so any bending or twisting is pretty much going to be taken out of it. You can save some time though if you want to batch out a few of these sets by cutting your 2x4s together, so keep that in mind before you start. Start at the miter saw and cut one 4-inch section out of the 2x4. Then follow that up by cutting an 8.5-inch section out of the 2x4. These two sections will be our template for the other cuts. You can measure out before each cut if you want, but I'm going to set up a stop block system. To do this, I'm going to take my saw and lock it in the down position. Then I'll take my 8.5-inch section and push it right up against the blade. Then you just need some scrap wood and a couple clamps. Use that scrap wood to press up against the other end of the board. Clamp that into place and you have a basic stop block system. This whole process only takes 30 seconds, but it'll end up saving you a lot of time if you're going to be making a lot of cuts. And by doing this, I know that the exact width between the blade and that block is the exact width of my template piece. We'll use the stop block setup to cut 4 more 8.5-inch sections out of our board. That should bring us to 5 total 8.5-inch sections. Next, I'm going to modify my stop block through the same process to cut 4-inch sections. Once that's done, cut 5 more 4-inch sections out of the 2x4 to bring you to 6 total. Now we're going to move on to the glue up. The glue up tends to be one of my least favorite sections of a build, mostly because it feels like it has to be very precise to get a good outcome. It's also easy to get a lot of squeeze out, and if you don't clean it up properly, your project kind of ends up looking bad at the end. The good news is this build has about the least precise glue up you'll ever see. Grab your clamps and some wood glue. I'm using Titebond 3 here. Grab 3 of the 4-inch sections and align them together like this. So for the 4-inch pumpkin, there's only 2 surfaces you need to glue. Add the glue and spread out evenly across the face. Really, the only important part of this lineup is making sure these edges look aligned. Grab 2 of your clamps and pinch them tightly together. Like I said, this is about the easiest glue up you can imagine. There's also so much surface area in contact that the bond is really strong and you don't have to worry about it breaking. Next, repeat that process for the big pumpkin. The main difference here is that we're going to use all 5 of those boards instead of just 3. Get that all clamped up, and then don't forget about your other 4-inch pumpkin. Once everything's glued and clamped, we can move on to the next step. While those are drying, let's cut our stems. These will be very similar to the stems I made in this video if you've seen that. If not, here's the process again. You can use leftover 2x4 or just any scrap you have around the shop. You're looking for dimensions about the size shown here on the screen, which is about 1/2 inch thick and 1.5 inches wide. I like to vary the height of the stem based on how big the pumpkin is. For the bigger pumpkin, I'm using 2¼ inch tall. The smaller pumpkin, I'm using 1¼ inch. There is some creative freedom here, so if you want to cut these at angles or just square it off like mine, it's up to you. Cut these out using your table and or your miter saw. Now let's give them some color. I personally like to stain these a darker color to contrast against the orange and the white, but you can choose any color you wish. For reference here, I'm using the Minwax Dark Walnut. Get these all stained so they can dry at the same time the glue is drying. Once the glue is all dried, we need to make a few more cuts back at the miter saw. First, we're going to correct any imperfections in the glue up by just cutting it square off at the top and the bottom. Next, set your saw to 45 degrees so we can knock off each of the corners. The key to making this look good is to get a very repeatable cut. For the bigger pumpkin, I'm cutting off about a 1 3/8 inch piece as measured from either side of the corner. For the small pumpkins, it's just 1 inch. To ensure I'm getting this repeatable cut, I'm going to set up the stop block again. Cut off each of those corners and then we'll move to paint. I like using white and orange paint for these, but feel free to use whatever colors you'd like. I actually ended up using spray paint for the orange ones, but I ran out of spray paint for the white ones, so I used this chalk paint. They end up being pretty similar. The advantage of the spray paint being a faster drying time, but the white chalk paint covers much better than 1 layer of spray paint would. You can put your own spin on these by modifying the paint setup you use. Instead of just painting solid colors like mine, maybe you want to put a black layer first, then cover it with orange or white and distress it with sandpaper. It's really up to you. Do what you think looks good. Once you've got those how you like them, allow that to dry. Once everything's dried, we can now do the final assembly of the stem to the pumpkin. The way I started doing this was using this combination of CA and wood glue. The CA glue dries quickly and kind of clamps everything together, while the wood glue is going to provide that longer term hold. However, I tested the CA glue by itself and it's actually really strong between wood joints. So for small parts that aren't structural, like these stems, I think moving forward, I'm just going to use the CA glue. There's a link to this CA glue in the description if you're interested in picking some up. Once that's dry, everything's done but the selling. My cost on these are about $5 between the 2x4 and the paint. As far as time, I'd say they took about 25 minutes of active time to get these fully assembled. It's obviously going to take a lot longer because you have these drying times between steps. So the 25 minutes is only accounting for active working time. Based on all that, I'm going to start these at $30 in my area and move from there. If you're looking to sell more projects this fall, you might also like this project video where I did another pumpkin design. Be sure to subscribe to not miss out on other builds that sell as we move through fall and into this Christmas season.